Kyle Martinez stood in front of the massive holographic display in the Galactic Council's main chamber. The three-dimensional map showed thousands of star systems, trade routes, and territorial boundaries. Every corner of the galaxy was mapped, in perfect detail, except for one area. A large section of space was simply marked as human territory, navigation restricted, with no details inside. Kyle had been serving as ambassador for the Zephyrian Empire for 5 years, but he had never really noticed this blank spot before. Today something about it bothered him. He walked closer to the display and tried to zoom in on the human sector. The map would not let him. It stayed the same. Just a gray area with no information. Strange, is it not? Said a voice behind him. Kyle turned around to see Lisa Brooks, one of the human consultants who worked with the Council's navigation department. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a friendly smile. Kyle had spoken with her many times during trade meetings. Yes, it is strange, Kyle replied. Why is this area blank? Every other part of the galaxy is mapped in great detail. Lisa's smile seemed forced now. She looked around the room quickly, as if checking to see who might be listening. Oh, that is just administrative boundaries, she said with a nervous laugh. You know how bureaucracy works. Sometimes the paperwork gets delayed. Kyle was not satisfied with this answer. He had been a diplomat long enough to know when someone was avoiding the truth. But Lisa, this area covers hundreds of star systems. Surely it cannot all be paperwork delays. Lisa's face went pale. She fidgeted with her hands and took a step back. I really should get back to work, she said quickly. The navigation department is very busy today. Before Kyle could ask another question, Lisa hurried away from the display. Kyle watched her leave and felt more confused than before. Why would a simple question about a map make someone so nervous? Over the next few days, Kyle decided to do some research. He visited the Council's main library and searched for information about human space. The results were disappointing. There were basic facts about human colonies, trade agreements, and diplomatic history. But there was nothing about the geography of human territory. No star charts, no detailed maps, no survey reports. Kyle found this very unusual. Every other species in the galaxy had detailed public records about their territory. The proud Zephyrians had complete maps of their empire available for anyone to study. The militant Korthax published detailed charts of their defensive positions. Even the secretive Veiltar had basic information about their borders available. But human space was different. It was like a hole in the galaxy's knowledge. Kyle decided to ask other ambassadors about this mystery. His first stop was the office of Ambassador Thok, representative of the Korthax Confederation. Thok was a large warrior-like alien with 4 arms and thick armor plates covering his body. Thok, old friend, Kyle said as he entered the office. I have a question about galactic navigation. Thok looked up from his work and grinned, showing sharp teeth. Always happy to help a fellow warrior, Kyle. What do you need to know? Have you ever traveled through human space? Thok's grin disappeared instantly. His 4 hands stopped moving and his eyes looked away from Kyle. Why would you ask such a thing? I was just curious, Kyle said. Your people are great explorers. I thought maybe you had mapped those regions. No, Thok said firmly. The Korthax do not travel in that direction. We have no business there. He turned back to his work and began shuffling papers. Was there anything else you needed? Kyle was surprised by Thok's reaction. The Korthax were famous for their boldness and curiosity. They had explored every dangerous corner of the galaxy. Why would they avoid human space? Kyle's next visit was to the elegant office of Ambassador Whisper of Stars, the Veiltar representative. The Veiltar were an ancient species, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. They were known for their wisdom and vast knowledge. Whisper of Stars was a tall, graceful being with silvery skin that seemed to glow softly. When Kyle asked about human territory, the ancient ambassador became very still. Young Kyle, Whisper of Stars said in a voice like wind chimes, there are some places in the galaxy where it is better not to ask questions. But why? Kyle pressed. What is so special about human space? The Veiltar ambassador was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke very carefully. Some boundaries exist for good reasons. The wise do not cross them. Kyle left that meeting feeling more puzzled than ever. Two of the most powerful species in the galaxy seemed afraid to even talk about human territory. What could make such strong civilizations so nervous? 3 days later, Captain Jake Sullivan arrived at the council station. He commanded a human diplomatic vessel called the New Horizon. Jake was a tall man with gray hair and laugh lines around his eyes. He seemed friendly and relaxed as he prepared for trade negotiations. Kyle decided to watch Jake's interactions with other ambassadors. What he saw was very interesting. Whenever Jake entered a room, conversations would stop. Other ambassadors would become quiet and polite, but Kyle could sense tension in the air. They treated Jake with respect, but there was something else, something that looked like fear. During the trade meeting, Kyle sat across from Jake at the negotiation table. The human captain was professional and fair in all his dealings. He seemed like a normal diplomat representing his people's interests. But Kyle noticed something odd. Whenever another ambassador started to speak aggressively or make demands, they would look at Jake and suddenly become much more reasonable. After the meeting, Kyle approached Jake at the station's restaurant. The human was sitting alone, eating a simple meal and reading reports on a datapad. "Captain Sullivan," Kyle said as he sat down. "May I join you?" "Of course," Jake replied with a warm smile. "Please call me Jake. How can I help you, Ambassador Martinez?" "I am curious about something," Kyle said carefully. "I have been studying galactic maps and I noticed that human territory is not well documented. Why is that?" Jake's expression did not change, but Kyle sensed something shift in the man's demeanor. The captain put down his fork and looked directly. "Hey Kyle, some things are better left unmapped," Jake said quietly. "Trust me on this." The way Jake said those words sent a chill down Kyle's spine. There was something in the human's voice, not a threat, but a warning. Kyle suddenly realized that he might be walking into something much bigger and more dangerous than a simple mapping error. That night, Kyle lay in his quarters staring at the ceiling. Every conversation he had about human space ended the same way, with fear, warnings, and silence. What was humanity hiding in their territory? And why did every other species in the galaxy seem to know something that Kyle did not? He made a decision. Tomorrow, he would find someone brave enough to tell him the truth about why the galaxy's maps ended at human space. Dr. Alex Carter had always been curious about the unknown. As a young Zephyrian scientist, he had spent years studying alien cultures and exploring mysterious regions of space. When he heard about Ambassador Martinez's questions regarding human territory, Alex became very interested. Alex worked at the Galactic Science Institute, where he had access to advanced research equipment. Unlike diplomats, scientists were allowed to use certain experimental vessels for exploration missions. Alex decided that if nobody would tell him about human space, he would go and see for himself. Alex requested permission to use a small research ship called the Starseeker. He told his supervisors that he wanted to study cosmic radiation patterns near the outer rim. This was not exactly a lie. Human space was near the outer rim of the galaxy. His request was approved without much questioning. The Starseeker was a fast, quiet ship designed for scientific observation. It had powerful sensors and could avoid detection by most security systems. Alex loaded the ship with supplies and headed toward the edge of human territory. The journey took 3 days. As Alex flew closer to the border, he noticed that traffic became very thin. Most ships seemed to avoid this region entirely. The few vessels he did see were heading away from human space, not toward it. Alex reached what his charts showed as the boundary of human territory. There were no visible markers, no warning beacons, and no patrol ships. Just empty space with stars in the distance. Alex checked his instruments twice to make sure he was in the right place. Taking a deep breath, Alex pushed his ship forward across the invisible line. Immediately, his instruments began making strange noises. The ship's sensors were detecting massive energy signatures unlike anything Alex had ever seen. The readings were so strong that he had to reduce the sensor power to prevent damage to his equipment. Alex looked at his main screen and gasped. Spread out before him were enormous structures orbiting dead planets. These were clearly space stations, but they were not human-made. The architecture was alien, not just different from humans, but different from any known species in the galaxy. The stations were huge, each one larger than a city. They were dark and silent, but Alex's sensors showed they were still powered. Energy flowed through them in patterns that made no sense according to known physics. Whatever built these stations had technology far beyond anything in the current galaxy. Alex flew closer to get a better look. As he approached the nearest station, his ship's computer began analyzing the structure. The results were disturbing. The station was incredibly old, possibly millions of years. But it was still functional and appeared to be scanning space around it. Suddenly, Alex's attention was drawn to something else. Floating near the station were dozens of destroyed spaceships. Alex moved closer to investigate and felt his blood turn cold. These were not old wrecks from some ancient war. Some of the ships looked only a few hundred years old. Alex's computer identified the ship designs. There were vessels from the Malthan Empire, which had tried to conquer the galaxy 2,000 years ago. There were ships from the Yorvak Consortium, an aggressive trading empire that had disappeared mysteriously 800 years ago. There were even a few ships from more recent times, pirates and raiders who had vanished without a trace. All of these ships had one thing in common. They belonged to species or groups that had tried to conquer or enslave others, and all of them had been destroyed by weapons that could cut through the strongest shields like they were made of paper. Alex's hands shook as he realized what he was looking at. This was not just a graveyard of ships. It was a graveyard of civilizations. Every aggressive empire that had threatened the galaxy had ended up here, destroyed by technology beyond their understanding. As Alex studied the wreckage, his ship's alarm system activated. Something was approaching fast. Alex looked at his scanner and saw a small human patrol ship heading directly toward him. The vessel was much smaller than the Starseeker, but Alex knew he could not outrun it. The human ship sent a communication request. Alex accepted the call, expecting to be arrested or threatened. Instead, a friendly female voice came through the speakers. "Hello there, Dr. Carter," the voice said. "My name is Lieutenant Sarah Kim. I am with the Human Border Patrol. You seem to be a bit lost." Alex was surprised that the human knew his name and rank. "I am conducting scientific research," he said nervously. "Of course you are," Sarah replied with what sounded like amusement. "And I am sure you have many questions about what you have discovered. Would you like to come aboard my ship for a cup of coffee and some answers?" Alex was confused. He had expected to be arrested or forced to leave immediately. Instead, this human officer was inviting him for coffee. "Is this some kind of trap?" "No trap," Sarah said gently. "But I think you deserve an explanation for what you have seen. Trust me, Dr. Carter. You are in no danger from us." Alex looked at his scanner again. The ancient stations were still there, silent and watching. The destroyed ships floated like ghosts in the darkness. He realized that he was in a place where normal rules did not apply. "Okay," Alex said finally. "I accept your invitation." Sarah's ship extended a docking tube and Alex transferred to the human vessel. The inside was clean and simple, much like other human ships he had seen. Sarah Kim was a young woman with dark hair and kind eyes. She led Alex to a small galley, where coffee was already brewing. "Please sit down," Sarah said as she poured 2 cups of coffee. "I imagine you have quite a few questions." Alex sat down and accepted the coffee. It was warm and comforting. "What are those stations?" he asked. "Those are guardian stations," Sarah replied. "They were built by a species that lived here millions of years ago. The builders are gone now, but their guardians remain." "What do the guardians do?" Sarah took a sip of her coffee and looked out the window at the ancient structures. "They keep the peace," she said simply. "They watch the galaxy and eliminate threats to civilization." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of threats?" "Species that become too aggressive," Sarah explained. "Empires that try to conquer everything, groups that enslave others or commit genocide. The Guardians have been stopping galactic tyrants for millions of years. Alex thought about all the destroyed ships he had seen. And humans know about this? We do more than know about it, Sarah said. We work with the Guardians. We help them understand which species are truly dangerous and which ones just need guidance. But why? Alex asked. Why would humans take on such a responsibility? Sarah smiled sadly. Because someone has to, and because we learned long ago that peace is worth protecting, even if it means keeping terrible secrets. Alex stared into his coffee cup. Everything he thought he knew about the galaxy was wrong. Humanity was not just another species exploring space. They were guardians of peace, working with ancient powers that could destroy civilizations. What happens to me now? Alex asked. That depends on you, Sarah replied. You can return to your people and report that human space has dangerous navigation, hazards. Most scientists accept that explanation and move on with their research. And if I do not accept that explanation? Sarah's expression became serious. Then we need to have a much longer conversation. And you need to meet someone who can tell you the whole truth about what humanity really does out here. Alex looked out the window at the Guardian stations. They stood silent in the darkness, ancient sentinels watching over the galaxy. He thought about all the species that had vanished from galactic history, all the aggressive empires that had simply disappeared. I want to know the truth, Alex said quietly. Sarah nodded. I thought you might say that. Finish your coffee, Dr. Carter. We have a long journey ahead of us. Sarah's ship traveled deeper into human space for 2 days. Alex watched through the windows as they passed more Guardian stations and ancient structures. Each one was different, but they all had the same feeling of immense age and power. Finally, they arrived at what looked like a large asteroid, but as they got closer, Alex could see that it was actually a hidden base built inside the rock. Sarah guided her ship into a concealed docking bay. Welcome to Outpost 7, Sarah said as they prepared to leave the ship. This is one of our monitoring stations. The person you need to meet is waiting for us. Alex followed Sarah through corridors carved from solid rock. The base was larger than it looked from outside. They passed laboratories, communication centers, and rooms full of equipment Alex did not recognize. Human technicians worked quietly at their stations, monitoring displays that showed data from across the galaxy. Sarah led Alex to a large observation deck with a thick glass window. Standing at the window was a man in his 50s with gray hair and tired eyes. He wore a simple uniform with no fancy decorations. Dr. Carter, Sarah said, I would like you to meet Commander Ben Walsh. He runs operations in this sector. Ben turned around and smiled. Welcome, Dr. Carter. I hear you have some questions about our neighborhood. Alex looked through the window and saw something that made his knees weak. Floating in space outside the station were beings made of pure light. They moved slowly and gracefully, like dancers in a cosmic ballet. But Alex could sense incredible power radiating from them. What are those? Alex whispered. Those are the architects, Ben said calmly. They built the Guardian stations you saw earlier. They are what remains of the species that once ruled this galaxy. Alex stared at the light beings. They are still alive. In a way, Ben replied. They gave up physical bodies millions of years ago. They exist as pure energy now, but they still care about what happens in this galaxy. Alex watched the architects move through space. They seemed to be communicating with each other, though he could not hear any sounds. Why are they here? Ben gestured for Alex to sit down at a table near the window. To understand that, you need to know some history. Long ago, the architects were much like other species. They had bodies, they built cities, they explored space. But they were also very wise. Alex listened carefully as Ben continued. The architects watched the galaxy for millions of years. They saw species rise and fall. They saw wars that destroyed entire star systems. They saw empires that enslaved billions of beings. And they decided that someone needed to maintain balance. So they became galactic police? Alex asked. Not exactly, Ben said. They did not want to rule the galaxy. They wanted to let species develop naturally. but they also did not want to see genocide and slavery happen over and over again. So they created the Guardian systems. Alex looked back at the architects floating outside. The stations we saw earlier? Yes, Ben confirmed. Before the architects transcended to energy form, they built automated guardians throughout the galaxy. These systems watch for species that become too aggressive or try to conquer everything. When a species crosses certain lines, the guardians eliminate them. Alex felt cold. They destroy entire civilizations? Only the ones that threaten galactic peace, Ben said firmly. The guardians do not act randomly. They monitor species for hundreds or thousands of years. They look for patterns of behavior. They only act when a species shows clear signs of becoming a threat to all other life. Alex remembered the destroyed ships he had seen. And humans know about this system? Ben nodded. We discovered it about 400 years ago. One of our exploration ships found a guardian station and made contact with the architects. Instead of trying to fight or hide from them, we chose to communicate. What did the architects want from humans? They were tired, Ben said sadly. They had been watching the galaxy alone for millions of years. They had transcended physical existence, but they still felt responsible for maintaining peace. When they met humans, they saw an opportunity. Alex leaned forward. What kind of opportunity? Ben stood up and walked to another window. This one showed a view of space where more guardian stations could be seen in the distance. The architects offered humans a choice. We could become their partners in maintaining galactic peace, or we could be classified as a potential threat like any other species. That does not sound like much of a choice, Alex said. It was not, Ben agreed. But our leaders saw an opportunity to do something good. The architects were not tyrants. They genuinely wanted to protect innocent species from conquest and slavery. Humans decided to help them. Alex watched as human technicians worked at stations around the observation deck. What exactly do humans do? Ben turned back to Alex. We serve as interpreters and early warning systems. The architects are incredibly powerful, but they think on a cosmic scale. They sometimes have trouble understanding the motivations of individual species. Humans help them distinguish between truly dangerous civilizations and ones that are just going through difficult phases. You prevent wars? We try to, Ben said. We monitor galactic communications, track military buildups, and identify potential conflicts before they start. Then we work diplomatically to redirect aggressive impulses toward exploration or trade instead of conquest. Alex began to understand. That is why other species seem nervous around humans. They know you have this power. They do not know the details, Ben corrected, but most species have some instinctive awareness that humans are connected to something larger. They sense that it is better not to make humans angry. A new voice joined the conversation. It is more complicated than that. Alex turned to see a woman in her 40s approaching their table. She had kind eyes but looked very tired. Dr. Carter, Ben said. This is Dr. Rachel Stone. She is our expert on galactic psychology. Rachel sat down and looked directly at Alex. The truth is that most species do not consciously know about the Guardians. But on some level they remember. Every species has ancient stories about civilizations that vanished suddenly. Deep in their genetic memory, they know that there are consequences for becoming too aggressive. Alex thought about this. So the fear is instinctive? Partly, Rachel said. But we also work very hard to maintain that fear without letting species know why they should be afraid. We use subtle psychological techniques to discourage aggressive behavior. For example, Alex asked. Rachel smiled slightly. Have you noticed that human ships never carry heavy weapons, but other species still avoid conflict with us? Alex realized she was right. Human vessels were lightly armed compared to most galactic militaries, yet nobody challenged human authority in diplomatic situations. We project an image of quiet confidence, Rachel explained. We never threaten anyone directly, but we make it clear that starting a fight with humans would be unwise. Most species accept this without questioning why. Alex looked back at the architects floating outside the station. And they approve of these methods? The architects care about results, not methods, Ben said. As long as galactic peace is maintained, they are content to let humans handle the details. Alex felt overwhelmed by everything he had learned. How many humans know about this? About 50,000, Rachel replied. We recruit carefully from military, scientific, and diplomatic personnel. Everyone who joins this program understands that they can never reveal the truth to anyone outside the organization. What about your families? Ben's expression became sad. That is the hardest part. We tell our families that we work for human security forces. We cannot share the real details of what we do. It is a lonely job, but it is necessary. Alex stared out at the Guardian stations. And if someone refuses to keep the secret? That has never happened, Rachel said quietly. Everyone who learns the truth understands how important it is. The galaxy stays peaceful because most species do not know how close they come to extinction when they start wars or enslave others. Alex thought about Ambassador Martinez and his questions about human space. What about people who get too curious? We monitor them carefully, Ben said. Most people accept simple explanations about navigation hazards or administrative boundaries. The few who keep digging usually get offered a choice similar to the one we are offering you. Alex looked at the three humans around him. They seemed like ordinary people, but they carried the responsibility for maintaining peace across the entire galaxy. What choice are you offering me? Rachel leaned forward. You can return to your people and report that human space contains dangerous cosmic phenomena that make navigation impossible. You continue your scientific career and never speak of what you have seen here. Or, Alex asked, or you join us, Ben said simply. You help us monitor the galaxy and prevent wars before they start. You become part of the most important work in galactic history. Alex looked out at the architects again. The beings of light seemed to be watching him, waiting for his decision. He thought about all the destroyed ships he had seen, all the civilizations that had vanished because they could not control their aggressive impulses. If I join you, Alex said slowly, can I ever go home again? You can visit, Rachel said, but you can never truly go home. Once you know the truth about the galaxy, everything changes. You see Alex spent the night in a small room at the observation station. He could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the destroyed ships floating in space and the beings of pure light watching from the darkness. The weight of what he had learned pressed down on him like a heavy blanket. The next morning, Rachel came to find him. Would you like to know how this all started? She asked. I think understanding the history might help you make your decision. Alex nodded. Rachel led him to a different part of the station where a large screen displayed historical records. She activated the system and began to tell him the story of humanity's first contact with the Guardians. 400 years ago, Rachel began, humans were still new to space travel. We had only been exploring beyond our solar system for about 50 years. Most other species in the galaxy thought we were primitive and harmless. The screen showed images of early human spacecraft. They were small and simple compared to the advanced ships Alex had seen in the galaxy. One of our exploration vessels was called the Pathfinder, Rachel continued. It was commanded by Captain Emma Wright, AEI, woman who believed that communication was more important than weapons. The Pathfinder was investigating an energy signature near what is now the edge of human space. Alex watched as the screen showed a recreation of the Pathfinder approaching a massive structure. It looked like one of the Guardian stations he had seen, but this one was active. Energy flowed across its surface in brilliant patterns. Captain Wright and her crew detected the station but did not understand what it was, Rachel said. They approached carefully, trying to scan it with their primitive sensors. Then something happened that changed galactic history. The screen showed the Pathfinder suddenly stopping in space. Bright beams of energy reached out from the station and surrounded the human ship. The Guardian system activated, Rachel explained. It detected an unknown species approaching and prepared to analyze the threat level. Most species would have panicked and started shooting. Captain Wright made a different choice. Alex leaned forward. What did she do? She opened a communication channel and transmitted a simple message. Hello, we come in peace. We would like to talk. The screen showed the Pathfinder floating motionless while energy patterns danced around it. Then something extraordinary happened. The energy beams changed color and began pulsing in a rhythm. The Guardian system had never encountered a species that responded with communication instead of violence, Rachel said. It did not know how to process this reaction, so it contacted the architects directly. Alex watched as new images appeared on the screen. The beings of pure light that Alex had seen outside the station materialized near the Pathfinder. They surrounded the small human ship like curious angels. The architects had been dormant for thousands of years, Rachel continued. They only awakened when the Guardian systems needed guidance. Captain Wright's peaceful response was so unusual that it triggered a full awakening. What happened next? Rachel activated new recordings. Captain Wright and her crew were brought aboard the Guardian station. They became the first humans to meet the architects face-to-face. Well, as face-to-face as you can get with beings made of energy. The screen showed the interior of a Guardian station. It was vast and filled with technology that looked both ancient and impossibly advanced. In the center, Captain Wright and her crew stood in a circle of light beings. The architects explained their purpose, Rachel said. They told Captain Wright about the species they had destroyed, the wars they had prevented, and the burden of maintaining galactic peace. They were tired of being alone with this responsibility. Alex could see Captain Wright on the screen. She was a middle-aged woman with gray hair and steady eyes. Even surrounded by incomprehensible power, she looked calm and determined. The architects offered humanity a choice, Rachel continued. Join them as partners in maintaining peace or be classified as a potential threat. But they also explained what partnership would mean. What did they want from humans? Intelligence and empathy, Rachel replied. The architects were incredibly powerful, but they had trouble understanding individual motivations. They could see when a species was becoming aggressive, but they could not always tell the difference between temporary conflicts and permanent threats to galactic peace. The screen showed Captain Wright and the architects engaged in what looked like deep conversation. Streams of light flowed between them as information was exchanged. Captain Wright asked for time to consult with Earth, Rachel said. The architects agreed to wait, but they also made something clear. Humanity's answer would determine their fate. If humans chose not to help, they would be monitored like any other species. And if they ever became a threat, Alex understood. The Guardians would destroy them. Yes, Rachel confirmed. But Captain Wright saw an opportunity. Humans had always struggled with war and conflict on their home planet. Here was a chance to help prevent war on a galactic scale. The screen showed Captain Wright returning to Earth aboard the Pathfinder. Alex could imagine the discussions that must have taken place when she reported her discovery. What did Earth decide? It took 3 months of debate, Rachel said. The decision had to be made by the entire planet, because it would affect all of humanity forever. Some people wanted to refuse and take their chances. Others wanted to fight the Guardians. But they chose partnership? They did, but with conditions, Rachel replied. Humans would not become enforcers for the architects. Instead, they would serve as interpreters and mediators. They would help the architects understand when species were truly dangerous and when they just needed guidance. The screen showed a ceremony taking place on the Guardian station. Captain Wright stood before the architects while Admiral Grace Peterson, the head of Earth's Space Forces, spoke with them. Admiral Peterson made a promise, Rachel said. Humans would bear the burden of knowledge and work to maintain peace through understanding rather than force. In exchange, the architects would provide advanced technology for exploration and defense, but not weapons of conquest. Alex watched as streams of light flowed from the architects to the human representatives. Knowledge was being transferred. The locations of Guardian stations, the history of destroyed civilizations, and the responsibility for galactic peace. But there was a price, Rachel continued. Humans could never reveal the truth about the Guardians. The galaxy had to believe that peace was maintained through natural balance, not ancient watchers. If other species learned about the Guardians, it might cause panic or rebellion. So humans became secret peacekeepers? More than that, Rachel said. We became the galaxy's conscience. Every time a species starts down the path toward conquest or genocide, we work to redirect them. We use diplomacy, trade incentives, and sometimes subtle psychological pressure to encourage better choices. The screen showed human agents working throughout the galaxy. They served as traders, diplomats, explorers, and scientists. But Alex could see now that they were also watching and influencing events to prevent conflicts. How do you identify potential threats? We monitor communications, track military buildups, and watch for certain behavioral patterns, Rachel explained. The architects taught us to recognize the signs. Species that develop certain types of weapons, governments that promote racial superiority, empires that practice systematic slavery. All of these trigger our attention. Alex thought about the destroyed ships he had seen. And if a species cannot be redirected? Rachel's expression became grim. Then we document the threat and report to the architects. If they agree that the species has crossed the line, the Guardians act. It usually happens very quickly and completely. How often does that happen? Not often, Rachel said. In 400 years of human partnership, only 3 species have been eliminated. Most threats can be redirected if we catch them early enough. Alex felt a chill. 3 entire civilizations had been destroyed while humans watched. Do you ever feel guilty about it? Every day, Rachel admitted. But we also remember what those species were doing. One was practicing genetic engineering to create slave races. Another was systematically destroying planets to harvest resources. The third was developing weapons designed to cause maximum suffering rather than quick death. Alex understood. The destroyed species had crossed lines that made them threats to all life in the galaxy. What about species that are just naturally aggressive but not genocidal? Those are the most challenging cases, Rachel said. We work very hard to channel their aggression toward positive goals. The Korthax, for example, were heading toward becoming conquerors. We helped them discover the satisfaction of exploration and honorable competition instead. Alex remembered Ambassador Thok's reaction when asked about human space. Now he understood why the Korthax warrior had seemed nervous. They know something is wrong, but not what. Exactly, Rachel confirmed. Most species have an instinctive sense that humans are connected to something powerful. They cannot explain it, but they know it is safer to stay on humanity's good side. The screen showed current operations across the galaxy. Human agents worked quietly to prevent conflicts. Alex had been back at the Galactic Council station for 2 months. On the surface, everything seemed normal. He filed reports about cosmic radiation patterns and continued his research into alien cultures. But everything had changed for him. He now saw the galaxy through different eyes. During council meetings, Alex watched human representatives with new understanding. When Captain Jake Sullivan spoke during trade negotiations, Alex could see the subtle way other ambassadors became more reasonable. When conflicts arose between species, human diplomats always seemed to have solutions that satisfied everyone. Alex had chosen to join the human operation, but his role was different from what he had expected. Because he was not human, he could not work at the hidden stations or interact directly with the architects. Instead, he became what Director Matt Johnson called a bridge agent. Director Johnson ran the Human Diplomatic Corps, the public face of humanity's secret mission. He was a calm man in his 60s, who had devoted his life to preventing galactic conflicts. When Alex met him, Johnson explained his new role. "You will return to your normal life," Johnson had said. "But you will also watch for signs of trouble within your own species and others. If you see anything that concerns you, you report it to us. You become our eyes and ears in places where humans cannot go." Alex discovered that there were dozens of agents like him throughout the galaxy. Scientists, diplomats, traders, and military officers from various species who had learned the truth and chosen to help maintain peace. They formed a secret network that fed information to human intelligence services. The work was harder than Alex had imagined. Knowing the truth about the Guardians meant seeing every conflict as potentially dangerous. When the Zephyrian Empire began developing new military technology, Alex had to determine whether it was defensive or aggressive. When tensions rose between trading partners, he had to assess whether it might lead to broader war. But Alex also saw the good that humans did. 3 weeks after joining the operation, he watched human agents prevent a major conflict between the Malthan Republic and the Yorvak Traders Union. The dispute had started over mining rights in a border system, but intelligence reports showed both sides were mobilizing military fleets. Human diplomats arrived with a proposal for joint mining operations that would benefit both species more than fighting over exclusive rights. The proposal was so reasonable and profitable that both sides accepted it immediately. A war that could have killed millions was prevented by a simple solution that nobody else had thought to suggest. Alex learned that this was typical of human methods. They rarely used threats or force. Instead, they found creative solutions that gave everyone what they actually needed rather than what they thought they wanted. But Alex also learned about the darker side of the work. He met Captain Danny Rodriguez, who commanded a human monitoring ship in the Outer Rim territories. Danny told Alex about the hardest parts of their mission. Last year, we identified a species called the Vorthak as a potential threat. Danny explained during one of their secret meetings. They had developed weapons designed to cause maximum suffering and were testing them on prisoner populations. We tried everything to redirect them. Alex listened as Danny described months of failed diplomatic efforts. Human agents had offered the Vorthak better technology, profitable trade agreements, and even territorial concessions. Nothing worked. The Vorthak leadership was committed to conquest through terror. In the end, we had to report them to the architects, Danny said quietly. The Guardians acted within days. An entire civilization, gone. Billions of beings who might have been saved if we had been better at our jobs. Alex could see the pain in Danny's eyes. This was the burden that humans carried. The knowledge that sometimes their efforts were not enough and entire species paid the price. Do you ever think about quitting? Alex asked. Every day, Danny admitted. But then I remember what the galaxy was like before humans took on this responsibility. The architects were much more aggressive back then. They eliminated threats quickly, without trying to understand or redirect them. In the old days, species like the Korthaks would have been destroyed for their military culture. Instead, we helped them become explorers and honorable warriors. Alex began to understand the true scope of what humans had accomplished. They had not just prevented wars, they had transformed the very nature of galactic civilization. Species that might have become conquerors had been guided toward becoming explorers, traders, and builders instead. But the price was enormous. Humans could never take credit for their achievements. They had to watch other species sometimes view them with suspicion or dismiss them as unimportant. They carried the responsibility for galactic peace while pretending to be just another civilization among many. Alex saw this burden clearly when he attended a council meeting about recent piracy problems in the Outer Rim. Several ambassadors complained that human security forces were not doing enough to stop the raiders. Ambassador Kyle Martinez was among the critics. The humans claimed to patrol those regions, Kyle said during the debate. But piracy continues to increase. Perhaps it is time for other species to take more active roles in law enforcement. Alex watched Jake Sullivan's face during this criticism. The human captain showed no emotion, but Alex could imagine what he was thinking. Human forces were actually working around the clock to prevent the piracy problem from becoming much worse. Intelligence reports showed that several criminal organizations were trying to unite into a conquest fleet. Human agents were working to keep them divided and fighting each other instead of innocent traders. But Jake could not explain any of this without revealing classified information. He simply nodded and promised that human forces would continue their efforts to address the problem. After the meeting, Alex found Kyle in the station's restaurant. His fellow Zephyrian was eating alone and looking frustrated. The humans are hiding something, Kyle said when Alex joined him. I have been studying their operations for months and nothing makes sense. Their territory is a blank spot on every map. Their ships avoid certain regions entirely, and other species seem afraid of them for no reason. Alex felt a stab of sympathy for his former colleague. Kyle was asking the same questions that had led Alex to discover the truth. But Alex could not provide answers without breaking his oath to the human organization. Maybe some mysteries are better left unsolved, Alex suggested carefully. Kyle looked at him sharply. You sound different, Alex. Ever since you returned from that research expedition, you have been strange. What did you find out there? Alex chose his words carefully. I found that the galaxy is more complicated than I thought. Sometimes the things we do not understand are actually protecting us. Kyle stared at him for a long moment. You know something, do not you? You found out what the humans are hiding. Alex finished his meal and stood up. I found out that some questions have answers that change everything. Be careful what you look for, Kyle. You might not like what you find. As Alex walked away, he felt the weight of his secret pressing down on him. Kyle was his friend and colleague, but Alex could not share the truth with him. The knowledge of the Guardians and humanity's role was too dangerous to spread. 3 months later, Alex received an urgent message from Director Johnson. A new crisis was developing that required his expertise. Alex traveled to a hidden human base in the asteroid belt where he met with Johnson and several other senior agents. We have a problem, Johnson announced. Our monitoring systems have detected something unusual. A species in the far rim has made contact with what appears to be a Guardian station, but it is not one of ours. Alex felt cold. What do you mean? The architects built Guardian systems throughout the galaxy, Johnson explained. Most of them have been dormant for millions of years, but this species seems to have accidentally activated one. If they learn how to control it, Alex understood the implications immediately. A species with Guardian technology could threaten the entire galactic balance. They would have weapons capable of destroying planets and the power to eliminate any opposition. What is being done? Alex asked. We are sending a team to make contact, Johnson replied. But we need someone who understands their culture and psychology. Your expertise in xenobiology could be crucial. Alex realized that his quiet role as an observer was ending. The galaxy faced a new threat, and he was being called to active duty in humanity's secret war for peace. As he prepared for the mission, Alex thought about Kyle's questions and the burden of knowledge he now carried. The galaxy continued its daily business, unaware of the ancient powers that watched from the shadows. Trade ships crossed between star systems, diplomats negotiated agreements, and ordinary beings lived their lives in peace. But Alex knew the truth. Behind all the normal activity of galactic civilization, humans worked tirelessly to maintain the balance. They prevented wars, redirected aggressive species, and bore the responsibility for decisions that affected billions of lives. The maps ended at human space because beyond that boundary, humanity stood guard against forces that could end everything. Not as conquerors or rulers, but as protectors who had chosen to sacrifice recognition for the greater good of maintaining peace.